So that's where we left off last night. Now, during those 15 years that Krishna was living in Mathura, 17 times, this king, Jarasandha, who his kingdom is in today's Bihar. So you know geography of India a little bit, right? Bihar is east of Mathura, like say east of Delhi. Bihar. So he came from the east with a big army, and so that's where we're going to begin. So as you see on the screen, the historic love letter, and the picture in the center, that's Krishna reading the letter from Rukmini, because Krishna is going to marry Rukmini. She sent him a letter. We're going to read that letter tonight. And behind Krishna, over his right shoulder there, is a Brahmin who had come to Dwarka to invite Krishna to marry Rukmini. And it's a 3-part series. It's straight from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 52, and this is the events that happened before Balaram's marriage and Krishna's marriage. That's this evening's topic. So, over there on the bottom, that's Muchukunda. From his eyes came fire, and Kaliyavana, this powerful king, burned to ashes just by Muchukunda's glance. There's a history which we told yesterday evening. Now, Muchukunda he was from the Earth planet, but he was such a powerful king, he was invited to the heavenly planets to assist the demigods, to help them in a big battle against the demons. So he agreed. He left his kingdom, left everything behind, just a self-sacrificing act, and he fought for... Shh. He fought for a long time, so long that on the earthly planet, yugas had passed. Because he was a king during Satya Yuga. You know what Satya Yuga is? No idea, right? You have an idea? Okay. Just like there's 4 seasons, summer, fall, winter, spring, on earth. So there's cycles, similarly, there's cycles of mankind. 4 yugas. They have names in Sanskrit. Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara, and this one is the winter season, called Kali Yuga, the age of coral. And Muchukunda, this one who's leaning on his right elbow there, he had fought for the demigods for a long time. And finally, the general of the demigods returned. He's Lord Shiva's son, Kartikeya. Kartikeya came back, and the demigod said, "Thanks a lot, you did a great job. And if you would like, you just ask us for any benediction at all that's within our power to give." And he said, "I just want to rest. I'm really tired. Just allow me to rest. And if anybody disturbs my rest, from my eyes will come this fire and they'll burst into flames." And that's what happened. But because he had lived during a previous yuga, he was really tall. He was really tall. So tall, according to Vishnu Purana, he was as tall as 100 palm trees. So when he left the cave, he took Krishna's permission. The people around in Mathura were afraid of this giant, 100 palm trees tall. And he went to Badrinath, where he engaged in worship, because that was the indication that Balram had given, that Krishna had given him. There were activities that he did as king that had karmic consequences, and he had to free himself from those misdeeds. So that's what he did. Meanwhile, after Krishna left the cave with Muchukunda, he went Krishna went back to the battlefield, and the 3 million soldiers between, you see in the painting, there's Balaram, and there's Krishna up there. So Krishna and Balram just single-handedly defeated 3 million soldiers. Something similar to what Lord Ramachandra did when he fought with the soldiers in Janastan. So after the soldiers were killed, they all had valuables, jewels and ornaments and this and that, and they started gathering up all the valuables to take to Dwarka, because that was the plan, to go to Dwarka. But while they were doing that, from the eastern side, as the wealth was being carried by oxen and men under Lord Krishna's direction, Jarasandha appeared at the head of 23 Akshohinis. What's an Akshohini? We heard this yesterday, here it is again. One Akshohini is that many chariots, same number of elephants, so many more infantry soldiers and cavalry. Just like those guys on the left riding horses, that's cavalry. There's the elephant fighters, a lot of elephant fighters, 109,000 elephants. So multiply that by 23, and that's a lot of soldiers. And they came marching from the eastern direction. And Jarasandha, before leaving his capital, this is the 18th time, eager to fight again with Lord Krishna, he called together the great astrologer brahmanas of the Magadha country. Magadha's the name at that time, now it's Bihar, Magadha province. If I defeat Krishna, when I return, I will take shelter of your feet and worship you all forever. But if I'm defeated and imprisoned, I will kill you all. Of this there is no doubt. He was like a mean-spirited person, and very, very, very powerful. So he started attacking from the eastern side, and the two Madhavas, that's one of them is on this picture here, is Krishna and Balaram. They, imitating human behavior, they ran swiftly away south of Mathura. So Mathura is the capital of that region. The district of Mathura has the capital of Mathura. And they climbed up this very tall mountain called Pravarshana Mountain. Jarasandha saw them running, and he started laughing, making fun of them. So now here's some reflection points. What makes somebody ridicule other people? What is it about the person who ridicules others? There's pride. So what is he proud of? What happened the first time continued 17 more times. All those soldiers, Krishna and Balaram, just the two of them, defeated them all, leaving one person standing on the battlefield, Jarasandha. And then they said to Jarasandha, you can go home now. So, shamed and defeated and humiliated, he returned 17 times. He came back. This is 18th time, and he has 23 Akshohini divisions. Jarasandha still thinks of himself as powerful. Pride. Even after being defeated totally by Krishna and Balaram 17 times. This is a painting showing the battle. There's Krishna and Balaram fighting against Jarasandha outside the city of Mathura. That's in the background in this painting. So what are some of the symptoms of pride? And what are the consequences of pride? Well, in the case of Jarasandha, he lost everything. We'll find out. So the two lords ran. They left the riches that they were gathering to take to Dwarka, And they feigned being afraid. So Krishna had done this in a previous time. What was that previous time? He ran from Mother Jasoda. When he ran from Mother Jasoda, he was acting just like a little child, although he's the personality of Godhead. When Queen Kunti spoke about this event, she was astonished. She knew about it because, well, Mother Jasoda is in relation with Krishna like mother, as is Kunti. Kunti, Krishna wasn't her son. Arjuna was her son, but she was her aunt. She was Krishna's aunt. So she had a relationship. Kunti had a relationship with Krishna like a mother with a child. So when Krishna was a small child, he was naughty, like some children are, and he had stolen butter and broke the butter pot and so forth. So she was going to reprimand him for that. So he ran. And as he ran, he was feigning fear because it was a loving exchange with his mother. There's no such thing as fear within Krishna, because according to the Bhagavatam, fear arises from duality. From the Upanishads, Dvitiyadvai bhayam bhavati. Fear arises from dvitiya, or duality. And in Krishna there's no duality. He's the absolute truth. There's no duality. But he was feigning because of the loving relationship with Mother Jasoda. And we know from Bhagavad-Gita that Krishna says, everyone as they surrender to him, yayatamam prapadyante tangs tadaiva bhajamyaham. Nice verse, chapter 4, Bhagavad-Gita. He reciprocates. So he's reciprocating with Mother Jasoda, running as if in fear, and he's doing the same thing with Jarasandha. But Jarasandha doesn't have any love for Krishna. He has animosity for Krishna. So out of pride and envy, when Jarasandha was chasing after Krishna and Balaram, they had climbed this giant mountain and they couldn't find him, he and his soldiers. So he decided, I'll just burn the whole mountain down. He placed firewood on all sides and set the mountain ablaze. So what did Krishna do? What Krishna did with Balaram, they jumped from the burning mountain, as you see in the painting down below. That's the fire in the mountain. And they jumped. According to the Bhagavatam, the mountain was 11 yojanas high. And 1 yojana equals 8 miles. So have you ever heard of a mountain that's 8 miles tall? What to speak of 11 times 8? That's a big mountain. During Krishna's time, everything was bigger. Govardhan Hill was much taller than it is today, and so this mountain. And when they jumped, look at their faces. Do they look fearful? They're having some pleasure pastime. So unseen by Jarasandha or his followers, 2 celestial chariots descended, and they carried the brothers straight to Dwarka. Very interesting. And now why did they do that? What was the purpose of Krishna and Balaram running away from the battlefield, leaving Jarasandha? To assume that they ran because of fear. Why did he do that? And the answer given in the Bhagavatam, he has a higher purpose. Now, Krishna's higher purpose was, it was time to marry Rukmini. And because he's omniscient, and she was in a she was in a very difficult situation, and Rukmini is the goddess of fortune, or Lakshmi herself. And so there's a natural relationship between Krishna and the goddess of fortune. He's the personality of Godhead, and she's the goddess of fortune. So it's a pastime of their becoming married. She was in difficulty. So he did what he did. He ran from the battlefield and jumped from the mountain and returned to Dwarka because Rukmini's home was very near Dwarka. He had to hurry up and get there to take care of her difficulty. Now, the reflection, there's going to be a few reflections. And that is, what's your purpose? Now, if we had, a different audience or different circumstance, you can just reflect. Something that I learned from Prabhupada, I'll share. When a goal is well defined, it's really easy to take steps to get there. And just like you've got a plan to get a PhD. So 5 years in the rock pile, but there's a goal. And so it's easy to take steps to get there. If the goal is not well defined, good luck getting there. When I was an undergraduate student in college, I had a friend who was a graduate student, and this was, so many years ago. He had a little sports car. When people didn't really have convertible sports car, he had one. So every Saturday he would go for a ride. And I asked him, where are you going when you get in your car, little sports car, and go for a ride? He said, just going for a ride. And my reply to him was, I hope you get there. Because some people have that idea about life. Life is, row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. You know that little rhyme? Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. It doesn't really matter because life is but a dream. So whatever happens, happens. You don't have to have a purpose. But if there's a purpose, then you can make steps to get there. So Krishna had a higher purpose. And it's important for us to understand, not just on the material side, but the ultimate or higher purpose of life. And here's a little chronology. I mentioned this in the early part of our discussion. Krishna was returned to Mathura at 10 years, 7 months. Our acharyas give us that information. After returning, he hadn't had his sacred thread ceremony yet. So Gargamuni, who was the main priest in Mathura, he did the sacred thread ceremony, and then it was time for him to go to school. So he went to school. He attended Sandipani Muni school for 2 months, and he learned everything in 2 months. He got his PhD in 2 months. But he was, he didn't even need to go to school. But so it's around three months, and then after that, that's when he sent Uddhava to go meet with the gopis. That lasted for some time also. So for the period of time when Jarasandha is sending these armies 18 times, it's approximately 17 years and 9 months, and then he went to Dwarka. And when he went to Dwarka, he was approximately 28 and a half years of age, and then he stayed there till he was 125, and then his pastimes ended, roughly. So after Krishna and Balaram returned to Dwarka, something that's not described in the 10th canto but described in the 9th canto is Balaram Marries Revati. Balaram is pictured there on the left. He's got his plow, and Revati is pictured on the right. So who is Revati anyway? The 9th canto Bhagavatam describes, this is pastime, the Kukudmi was Revati's father. Kukudmi was Revati's father, and they lived also during Satya Yuga. And he recognized that his daughter, Revati, was super qualified. And so he decided he would go visit Lord Brahma and ask Brahma if he could make an arrangement for his daughter's marriage. So he went to he had the capacity to travel all the way to Brahmaloka. So previously people had interplanetary travel powers without a rocket ship. And when he got to Brahma's planet, Brahmaloka, Brahma was busy. Brahma was hearing a concert by the Gandharvas. So the secretary of Brahma said, "You're going to have to wait. He's busy right now." So when the concert was over, Brahma came and asked him, "What is it that you would like?" Now, I don't have these verses. It says to read them, but Hare Krishna. But I'll summarize what Brahma said to Kukudmi. So in the bottom right, the bottom right, there you see Kukudmi. Seated on the royal throne, that's Brahma. Over there on the left, of course, that's Lord Shiva. He was also attending the Gandharva concert. And when when Kukudmi came before Brahma, he laughed and said, "Please understand that when time passes on the higher planets, so much time passes on the earthly planet. During this time that you've been waiting, on Earth, 27 yuga cycles have passed." So back again to the 4 yugas. Remember? As the 4 seasons. The names are Satya, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali. And the duration of time for 1 yuga cycle, according to the Vedic teaching, 1,800,000 years. Earthly years, solar years. Times 27. So 27 yuga cycles have passed. So when you go back to the Earth planet, no one's going to even know you. You're not going to recognize anything. Everything is completely changed. But here's some good news. The good news is, at this particular time, Balaram has appeared. And Balaram will be a suitable husband for your wife. So you just go back to the Earth planet and say Brahma sent you, the matchmaker. And so when he returned back to Earth, Balaram and Revati were married, and but she was very tall, because remember, she was raised during Satya Yuga, and the physical stature as the yugas passed diminish. So she was much taller than Balaram. That was a problem. So he knew what to do. He just took his plow, placed his plow on her shoulder, Vishnu Purana says, and she shrank to the proper size. And so they married. So before Krishna was married, Balaram was married to Revati. And now comes the marriage with Rukmini, which is the main topic of this discussion. Who is Rukmini? We're going to introduce who she is. She is the goddess of fortune herself. Just as Narayan has his expansion as Lakshmi, so as Lakshmi has Narayan, so Rukmini is the same expansion for Krishna. She is an expansion of Radharani. She appeared as the daughter of King Bhishmaka. King Bhishmaka was a ruler of a province known at that time as Vidarbha. So one of Rukmini's names is Vidarbhi, the daughter of King Bhishmaka. And here's the situation. King Bhishmaka had 5 sons. The eldest of those sons was Rukmini, and there were 4 other brothers, and she was the youngest sister, Rukmini. And because she was the daughter of a powerful king, many great sages visited that kingdom. And she had the opportunity, including hearing from Narada Muni, about Krishna. And naturally, she developed some attraction just by hearing about Krishna, just like we hear about Krishna. But we're not Rukmini. It doesn't do the same thing to the heart that happened to Rukmini. But hearing about Krishna, her mind became very attracted and eventually became fixed to marry Krishna. That was her heart, and it's natural because she's the goddess of fortune and he's the original personality of Godhead. But like everything in life, there was a problem. Her brother had a different idea. Hearing about Krishna from pure sources invoked her attraction to Krishna, and Rukmini decided to marry him. Krishna had also heard about and knew Rukmini's transcendental qualities because she's omniscient, but he also heard about her. That's why he returned from Mathura back to Dwarka. So there's a teaching here that there's power in hearing pure sound vibration. We're getting the same opportunity because this is just the Srimad Bhagavatam telling the pastimes of Krishna. In our morning classes, we're hearing from the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad-Gita. Everybody here knows Bhagavad-Gita. And there's another part of Srimad Bhagavatam where Krishna is instructing another cousin. Arjuna is Krishna's cousin, right? Cousin means Arjuna's mother and Krishna's father were brother and sister. Vasudeva and Devaki were brother and sister. But Vasudeva also had a brother. And his brother had a son. And the son was Uddhava. And Krishna is instructing Uddhava in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And in that section that we're reading, Krishna is describing that the primary means for spiritual elevation is hearing topics about Krishna, or Hari Katha, or Krishna Katha. Of course, when the heart is open and the hearing process is alert, it has the greatest of all potencies for spiritual elevation, more so than any other activity. This is repeatedly being described in the Bhagavatam. So that's what happened here. Hearing is the universal process that works for spiritual elevation. But it's but it's important what we hear and the source that we hear from. So one should be attentive to the hearing. Sound, there's so many things to say about sound. So many things to say about sound. Sound is very powerful. Sound, like time, you don't see sound, but you see the effects of sound. You don't see time, but you see the effects of time. Moves things. And sound moves things. Sound moves matter. Sound changes the configuration of gross matter. Subtle sound changes the configuration of gross matter. So it changes the heart and the mind. Sound is really important. So where you hear it from is important. So now here's the second message connected with this nice story, and that is thinking about your higher purpose. I'll assume that you're assembled here because you'd be off doing something else if there wasn't a higher purpose of hearing about Krishna. So to align that spiritual purpose of life, what's your purpose or goal for yourself as a person, not just limited to the roles that you play? What do you want to be internally? I'm being asked this question a lot lately because of the pandemic. People are leaving their bodies like a lot, and it's a notice to those that are surviving, those that have left their bodies. We don't know where the soul is going. We know that the soul is going to go somewhere. But what is being done today to ensure the destination of the soul after this body? And everything, we discussed it yesterday evening, like 15 minutes worth. That which you do during this lifetime is going to determine your destination. What your consciousness is fixed upon in this lifetime is going to determine your destination. And time is ticking. And it's not just something for old people. When old people, because they've done their worldly thing, now it's time to think about where I'm going next. I mean, some people live their lives that way, but that's not what the Vedic culture teaches. Vedic culture teaches, here's Prahlad's teaching to his classmates. Prahlad Maharaj to his classmates. Komara acharat pragyo, dharman bhagavataniha. At the age of childhood, that's when the orientation of the heart and the mind should go towards the goal of life, not just complete your education, to get a good job, to get a standard of living you can live by and raise a family and have grandchildren, then you're gone. I mean, those are things that are important, but there's something beyond that. The internal orientation of life's purpose. And so the message is, align yourself with that purpose. Rukmini had a purpose. She wanted to marry Krishna. Rukmini and Krishna had similar qualities. And they were naturally attracted to each other. So that was nice. But there was an obstacle, and there he is, her elder brother. Rukmini, different than Rukmini, and her father Bhishmaka had a different idea. Rukmini was envious towards Krishna, and he had a friendship with Shishupal. So it was Rukmini's idea that his younger sister should marry Shishupal. And that was a problem for Rukmini, because there was no way she's going to marry Shishupal. She wanted to marry Krishna. So Rukmini made a big issue in the family, in the royal family. And the father, the king, didn't want to make waves in the family, so he just yielded. So the son, the elder son, started making all these arrangements for marriage and invited kings, and the whole deal was going on. He was being abusive, not being at all sensitive to what his sister wanted or even what was good for her. But he was acting through his envy towards Krishna at the cost of his sister's interest and, for that matter, her life. So the Bhagavatam teaches, dark-eyed Vaidarbhi was aware of this plan, and it deeply upset her. Analyzing the situation, she composed a letter to Krishna and quickly sent the letter with a trustworthy Brahmana to Krishna. So I'm going to read to you her letter. It comes in the next chapter, but it's very interesting. Let's see here. Chapter 52. There we go. Text number 37. Okay. Rukmini said, this is her letter. Oh, beauty of the worlds, having heard of your qualities, which enter the ears of those who hear and remove their bodily distress, and having heard also of your beauty, his qualities and his beauty, which fulfills all the visual desires of those who see. I have fixed my shameless mind upon you, O Krishna. She's really direct. But she doesn't have much choice because the next day is her wedding. Oh, Mukunda, you are equal only to yourself in lineage, character, beauty, knowledge, youthfulness, wealth, and influence. O Lion among men, you delight the minds of all mankind. What aristocratic, sober-minded, and marriageable girl of a good family would not choose you as her husband when the proper time has come? Therefore, my dear Lord, I have chosen you as my husband, and I surrender myself to you. Please, come swiftly, O Mighty One, and make me your wife. My dear lotus-eyed Lord, let Shishupal never touch the hero's portion like a jackal stealing the property of a lion. If I have sufficiently worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead by pious works, sacrifices, charity, rituals, and vows, and also by worshipping the demigods, brahmanas, and gurus, then may Gadagraja, that's a name for Krishna, Gadagraja, come and take my hand, and not Damagosha's son or anyone else. Damagosh is the father of Shishupal. From they're relatives. They're cousins. Shishupal and Krishna were cousins. I'm not going to marry that person. Oh, unconquerable one, tomorrow. This is really short notice. Tomorrow, when my marriage ceremony is about to begin, you should arrive unseen in Vidarbha and surround yourself with the leaders of your army. She's giving strategy. She's a princess, and she's not she's not a wimp. She knows about strategy, and she's giving Krishna the battle plan. Then crush the forces of Chaitya and Magadendra and marry me in the Rakshasa style, winning me with your valor. Now, the Rakshasa style means in royal families, there are different ways that marriages can be conducted. But one of them is a king or a prince can show up and just abduct the girl. And when the girl is kidnapped, more or less, then the other kings or princes get their chivalry going and they attack the person, and the person has to defeat them all. And it's considered noble and honorable and fantastic. So she's preferring that to marrying Shishupal. And Shishupal's not a nice person. We'll find out later. Since I will be staying within the inner chambers of the palace, you may wonder, how can I carry you away without killing some of your relatives? Now, relatives means if they're going to be married, then people are going to be harmed. And so they're not relatives yet, but they would be relatives, and you don't want to kill people unnecessarily. So how are you going to navigate this one? Here's how. But I shall tell you a way. On the day before the marriage, there is a grand procession to honor the royal family's deity. And in this procession, the new bride goes outside the city to visit the goddess Girija. Girija is the local name there for Durga. So the family deity of Bhishmaka was Durga. Now, Bhishmaka also heard about Krishna, as did his daughter, and he was fully satisfied that his daughter should marry Krishna. But he didn't want to disrupt, the family situation, because Rukmini was adamant. The elder brother was adamant and envious, and so he went along with the whole thing. But so there was a family tradition. The day before the wedding, so it's part of the wedding procedure, but the daughter to be married goes outside the city to the temple and sees the deity and takes the blessings of the family deity, and then goes back. O lotus-eyed one, great souls like Lord Shiva hanker to bathe in the dust of your lotus feet and thereby destroy their ignorance. If I cannot obtain your mercy, I shall simply give up my vital force, which will have become weak from the severe penances I will perform. Then, after hundreds of lifetimes of endeavor, I may obtain your mercy. So what does that mean? She's saying, if you, for some reason, can't make it here or decide not, I'm just going to dedicate myself to you anyways. And however many lifetimes have to pass until you say, yes, I'm yours. So that's her letter. She's very eloquent and very strategic. And it's a good plan. There's the section we just read from. So she sends the Brahmana on his way, and the Brahmana is very happy to be the messenger of the young princess. And the Brahmana goes very swiftly and reaches Dwarka. And when he reaches Dwarka, after the Brahmana had eaten and rested, Sri Krishna massaged the Brahman's feet with his own hands, and then inquired from him about the purpose of his arrival. And the Brahman explained, "Whence have you come crossing the impassable sea, and for what purpose? As you know, Dwarka was in the sea. There was a bridge to make it there, but what brought you here? Explain all this to us, if it is not a secret, and tell us what we may do for you." Thus questioned by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who incarnates to perform his pastimes, the Brahmana told him everything, the whole situation, and then he read the letter. And this is the last slide. Betrothed to a man she loathed, Rukmini wanted to elope with Krishna, but would he consent? So that's the end of part 1. And the drama goes on. It's very nice. Now, it's important to remember many things. One, the Krishna is the original personality of Godhead from whom everything comes, including the goddess of fortune. There's an inseparable relationship between Shakti and Shaktiman, between Rukmini and Krishna. So it's just a pastime. The pastime of coming together of the Supreme, just like the marriage between Sita and Ram. They're eternally associated with one another. So the appearance of Sita, the marriage of Sita, the pastime is a pastime. And it's very unique. Like we don't have a pastime in Vaikuntha of the goddess of fortune taking birth, or the god of fortune being married to Narayan. She's eternally like that. But in Ayodhya and in Krishna's pastimes in Goloka, there's these pastimes where the Lord and his consort are come together. And then there's, when the events occur, there's sometimes a challenge. In this case, it's Rukmini. And then Shishupal and all the other kings that are buddies of Shishupal. I mean, it just made the pastime enjoyable for Krishna. So we'll continue tomorrow. One more time. In Bhagavad-Gita, many other places, there's emphasis on the spiritual merit of hearing. The whole of the Vedas is based on sound, Shruti, it's called. By the process, by sound vibration, spiritual consciousness is revived. Or the other way, by mundane sound vibration, material consciousness becomes covered. So to restore this spiritual consciousness, doing what we're doing right now is the primary method. There's the chanting of Krishna's name, the Sankirtan process, congregationally together singing Krishna's name in different ways, through musical form or just by chanting on beads, or quietly meditating on the sounds of Krishna's names. Japa, that's a standard practice in Vedic culture. And hearing of Krishna's pastimes. I'll say one more thing. These two, the chanting of mantra and the hearing of Harikatha, they're compared to worship of Krishna, which is not different than his name, and the Harikatha is like the Sarup Shakti of Hari. I'll say it again. See if you can catch the distinction. The name is the same as Krishna. Abhinatvam nama namino. The name and the person named are the same. Nama and nami are the same. The person and the name of the person. In spiritual realm, they're non-different. But we don't worship Krishna alone, we worship Krishna with his potency. We don't worship Narayan, we worship Narayan with Lakshmi, Lakshmi Narayan. We don't worship Lakshmi without Narayan, we worship Lakshmi Narayan. Ravana was interested in Lakshmi. Shurpanakha was interested in Ram without Sita. But we're not like that. We want Sita Ram. We want Lakshmi Narayan. We want Rukmini Krishna. So this is the coming together of the Shakti and Shaktiman. The Harikatha is like the Sarup Shakti of the Lord. And the Sarup is Krishna. So we do both. We chant the name and we hear the wonderful pastimes and activities. That's the worship of Radha and Krishna together. Or Sita and Ram together. Or Lakshmi and Narayan together. The Lord in his potency together. And by the Srimad Bhagavatam, last, is such a wonderful literature, includes both. Includes names and includes all the pastimes and activities of the Supreme Lord. So it's very, I feel very blessed to be given the opportunity by Prabhupada to speak this message to others. And coming up very soon, Krishna Janmashtami, you get a lot of it from morning till night. And this is a warm-up. Krishna Janmashtami, in between Balaram's appearance day and Krishna Janmashtami. So let's see if there's some discussion or topics that you'd like to hear something further about. Yes.
What has been your experience in sound changing?
Okay. We have some audience that's hearing remote, so he's got a little tiny portable microphone. It's cute, but it works.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. What has been your experience in sound and these mantras, Hare Krishna, Mahamantra, changing lives that you said in the beginning? Like how
you want some autobiographical sharing?
No, but just some practical, what you have seen in your experience, how it has changed or transformed lives or
people.
Right.
Myself included.
Okay.
I'll share something that made a big impression. There are gatherings of going under different names, and one of those names that we use these days in ISKCON is Bhakti Vriksha. Vriksha means tree. So you're part of a Bhakti Vriksha group? Okay. So I was attending one of those that every month several groups would come together and have kind of like a Kumbh Mela. And so I was invited to one of those. There was maybe twice as many people in the room as here. So at the beginning of this particular session, what they called it icebreaker. What was your experience this week that you'd like to share with others? That's something that you heard in the Bhagavad-Gita discussion that helped you, gave you some realization. And one man immediately raised his hand. And it took about 10 minutes, but I'll make it short. He said, my whole life, since I was a little boy, I had a fascination for Bhagavad-Gita. So whenever there was some opportunity to hear and discuss Bhagavad-Gita, I would go. But to be honest with you, I never really understood Bhagavad-Gita. I had faith in it anyways. And then, I grew up and went to college and got a job, and here I am living in New Jersey. And so when I moved here, I said, okay, they're going to study Bhagavad-Gita. Great, I'll go there. And I found my experience was that I have an anger problem. And he said, it's not, I don't like hit people, but it's not, I don't take it out in my family so much, but it's more at the workplace. People do these backstabbing things and really hurtful things to each other, and I get really angry. Instead of solving the problem, they just start pointing fingers and stabbing each other and doing all these bad things. So I get angry. But I found, I've been attending this Bhagavad Gita study group now for just 3 months. I've taken anger management courses and all those things, but it didn't work. But now, just recently, I'm finding this long-standing anger problem has just kind of got up and went away. It just happened at work. It happened at home, and it happened at work. And something that normally would just get me angry, I was just remaining very calm. And I was staying fixed on solving the problem and not becoming angry at people that were stabbing each other in the back. And I was really surprised, and I know why. It's just studying Bhagavad-Gita in a way that I never studied it before. I'm understanding it, and its effect is changing my heart. And I can say that in my life. A short statement. Srimad Bhagavatam is a place of shelter for me, and I have found that Srimad Bhagavatam has changed the way that I experience the world. It hasn't necessarily changed the world, but it's changed the way how I experience the world. And I like encouraging people to have their heart changed so that same thing happens. It's subtle, it's spiritual, but it's palpable and very effective.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for coming and giving the class tonight. I just had one really quick question, which is, I'm not sure if I missed it, but did you say how much the distance was that the messenger had to travel between Rukmini and Krishna?
I was curious about that, but he was able to make it overnight.
Okay.
However far it was, he had a swift vehicle to carry him, a chariot or whatever. He didn't just walk, although Brahmanas normally would walk. It was an important mission, and he got there quickly and came back quickly.
Okay, Hare Krishna.
Don't know the distance. But he came in early the next morning. Anything else? We got a lot of really active children here. Over here.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So when the classes are given or any messages are being given, the reception, like everybody, how much they absorb and what if someone takes is like completely dependent on how much they are open to receiving. So what are some of the steps that somebody could take to increase that reception of the messages?
Nice question. There's a nice verse in Canto 1, Chapter 2, Srimad Bhagavatam, where it says, Nashta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya. So that to take it apart, there's two things that are particularly helpful, and that's rendering service. And the mode of service is different than the mode of enjoyment. The mode of service is there's a person who I want to have a relationship with. The purpose of that relationship and the person is not I get something from them, but I want to do something for them. Like, an ideal kind of loving relationship within a family. It's one does something for the other because I want to be pleasing to the family member. That's an ideal family situation, or any relationship. So the mode of service to Bhagavata, and there's the book and there's the person. Bhagavan is the supreme person, and Bhagavata means in relation to the supreme person. So there's the book Bhagavata and the person Bhagavata, and you serve the person Bhagavata who speaks the book Bhagavata, and the book Bhagavata speaks about Krishna. So it's the mood of service towards the book and towards the person who is speaking its message. The mood of service. The 5th canto, Rishabdev says the same. We just read it this morning. Mahat sevam dvara mahor vimuktes. Mahat seva. You serve the great souls. Dvaram means the gateway or doorway. Ahor vimuktes. It's the gateway to freedom from the bondage of material existence. Service to great souls. And the message that the great souls give. And when that mode of service is there, the heart becomes, the receiver is on. And then we start kind of adjusting the receiver so we get the signal right. Mode of service. Yes?
Thank you, Maharaj. So you mentioned that the mode of service to serve the great soul. So when we are hearing Srimad Bhagavatam or any lectures, so we are hearing with attentiveness and everything. So is there a specific mode over there also?
Over where?
In hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam?
Yeah, it's a mode of service. That mode of service towards the Bhagavatam means, okay, I'm hearing a whole bunch of stuff. And out of that, this is, the experience of a good listener. I hear a bunch of stuff, and all the stuff that I hear, I don't understand everything. But here's something I do understand. So in the mode of service, let me apply that at the heart level, at the body level, at the mind level, at the speech level, or whatever is the appropriate. Let me apply that and see what happens. That's service. There's the speaker and there's what is spoken. The Bhagavad is what is spoken, the book. So something makes sense. It resonates. Let me apply it in the mood of service. Then you're serving the book Bhagavad as well as the person Bhagavad. Application of that teaching. It's not everything, because not everything I don't have the capacity to understand everything. But that which I do understand, let me apply it. Little by little. And continue hearing and little by little. That's service to the book.
Thank you.
When we are reading Bhagavatas,
Before you speak, can we give you the microphone, because our remote people want to hear you too?
yes, we are reading Bhagavatas, then Mataji said that itself is a service to the
Fantastic.
absolute personality.
Yes.
So-
it is service. Hearing, and then take that hearing one step further and apply it. Because that was his question. How do you serve the person? Okay. How do you serve the book? You apply it. Part of it is hearing, and then you apply that which makes sense.
Yes, Prabhuji, because we can start with the simple things like chanting and
Sure.
yes.
Sure.
Like you said that whatever you understand, you start with that.
Yeah. Yes.
So Sravana, Kirtana. So beginning we can start with that and then.
That's right. So let's take a practical example. We're hearing this evening part 1 of Rukmini's marriage. So purposefully, this was designed so there's some reflections or some, bring it inside. Like, okay, what's my purpose in life? How do I go about aligning the decisions that I'm making in the course of my day with my purpose in life? Now, if I don't do that, then, I'm not likely to get there. But if I do that, I'm likely to. So little by little, just like hearing, then the application of what we're hearing. Because we're also, like Rukmini, we're also hearing. She heard from Narada Muni and other great sages. We're hearing from Shukadev Goswami and Vyasadeva and the great acharyas. So the source is fantastic. Now, from what I'm hearing, how can I apply? So specifically, even in what we're doing this evening, how can I apply this? Let me reflect on what my purpose is. And I may, just like Krishna did, I may decide to not do something like deal with Jarasandha, and I may decide to do something else because there's a purpose. In Krishna's case, the purpose was marrying Rukmini. In our case, we may forego doing something that maybe it seems important or whatever, but there's something more important because there's a higher purpose, so I just keep staying focused on the higher purpose. So, like that principle, how can I apply that in my life? It's practical. Along with the purification that comes just from hearing Krishna's pastimes, and that's purification in itself. So go further and go further. How do I apply that which I've understood from this pastime? Okay. Do we have anything online? Okay. That's it. You have something.
I can ask one more question, Maharaj. So even in bhakti, sometimes you are put into a situation where it's not really comfortable, and so there are so many situations you are really propelled forward, like you are not in a position to do certain things, but you still do it. I mean, it just feels so uncomfortable at that time too, sometimes. So what's the take really? So it's really good to just push yourself and see if you can do it,
It
or?
depends. It depends on what the feeling of discomfort, what's your threshold. It also depends on how important is that thing that you're not so comfortable with, but that it gets done anyways. So it depends. There's all kinds of factors in considering pushing forward or pausing or stepping back or something. It depends. Here's a practical example. When I was once upon a time I was a college student a few years ago. Like 52 years ago, I was a college student. And I read 7 Bhagavad-Gitas before I read Bhagavad-Gita number 8. I read it many times because I knew It was a book of wisdom, but I knew also that I didn't understand it. Time passed. Someone gave me Prabhupada's Bhagavad-Gita. I started to understand it. I was very surprised. How can I understand this one? I couldn't understand the other 7. But I kept reading because it was nice. And in the course of time, a little light went on, and the light said, the others were scholarly. They're like a flashlight looking for the sun instead of the light of the sun, descending. Because Bhagavad-Gita is descending knowledge, it's not ascending knowledge. It's not based on scholarship. It purifies the heart when it's coming from the right source. So after some time, I started practicing the teachings of Bhagavad-Gita, reading it and practicing it, and decided at some point in time, you know what? I just want to jump in the pool. Swim around for a while and see what it's like. So I decided to live in a temple. And one of the first things I did, living in a temple, was go walk up to people that I didn't know at all and ask them to take a Back to Godhead magazine or some literature. And I was like a shy person. It kind of was uncomfortable. But that was what we were doing. I asked for it, jump in the pool. So that was part of being in the pool. So because I understood, with my intelligence, I understood there's benefit. As I had benefit, let me see how I can be an instrument to benefit others and give them Bhagavad-Gita. So I did it. It was uncomfortable. And for years, it was uncomfortable. Because it was just my personality type was different than just walk up to people I didn't know, and they didn't wake up in the morning saying, gee, I hope I meet somebody that's going to give me a Bhagavad-Gita today. That's not how they were thinking. So I came into the middle of their bubble, and I'm this, kind of reserved, shy person. It was uncomfortable. But I did it anyways, because I understood that purifying for me and good for the people, at least to give them an opportunity. They can say no, that's okay. But give them an opportunity. So it depends. Some things, you're uncomfortable, you just leave it behind. Or push it to the side, or wait till later, or something like that. So it depends.
Maharaj, there is a question from Vinod. Sometimes when we are not able to complete significant rounds of chanting Mahamantra in one go, is it okay to steal time and do few at a time?
Yes. I was told, I don't know if it's a fact, somebody needs mommy. Okay. Little children can make a lot of sound. Okay. The question again, I got distracted.
Sometimes when
16. Okay. Prabhupada, I was told, Prabhupada said when he was a householder, he broke his chanting up into blocks. 1 quarter, 1 quarter, 1 quarter, in the different times of the day. My experience is, and I encourage people accordingly, the best time for mantra meditation is early in the morning, before your day begins and things get busy, because those are the mode of goodness hours of the day. And when you do mode of goodness activity in the mode of goodness hours, it helps make the heart clean, and it then gives you spiritual energy and strength to carry throughout the rest of the day. That's best. But if it doesn't work for somebody for some reason, then at intervals during the day is fine. But my experience is it's not as effective. Okay.
and it's just an extension of the same question, Maharaj.
Well, further away, please, because you're too loud.
It's an extension of the same question. Is there a difference between chanting significant rounds in one go as opposed to chanting few rounds?
Well, it's its quality. It's not, it's the sequence. Attentiveness is the essence, and whatever brings attentiveness, that's the essence. So strive for that, however it works for you. Okay. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Now, this is one big Bhakti Vriksha group, or just family, friends, or what's the situation here?